Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and I wanted to give an update on the EV charge monitoring series. After the last video, I was using it for a couple of months and I have seen how it works, how it goes through a couple of charge cycles. And of course I realized that I have done some mistakes in the code, and then I have also done, I missed something that I wanted to add. So I'm just going to recap the changes that I did since the last video. So the main flow hasn't really changed because I still have the basic things here on the top, which saves the data in the Influx AB database, and it does the whole monitoring, sending out the telegram. So that hasn't really changed. And by the way, since I talk about the database, I can just quickly give you a shot of what it looks like. So if I do explore, and so it's the Node-RED Node-RED bucket and the sensors measurement and the car charger device. And if I, let's say, select power, let's just do power. Oh, actually, let's just, power and voltage. So if I do this, then you can see that's for the last 12 hours. So there was a little bit of charge here in the, in the morning. Actually, this is when I turned on the heating. So and it was still connected. So it was pulling power from the grid to heat up the car in the morning. And then I put it back on charge. And I changed that small unit to use 16 amps instead of 10 amps because I was using 10 amps up until now for the beginning. So now it's doing 16 amps. So the voltage is like 3,500, which is slightly less than 3,600 watts, which would be like 16 amps. But probably it's not drawing the full 16 amps. I would assume 15.5, 15.4. Good enough. That's how it goes. So that's how the data looks like in Influx. And now if I go back to Node-RED, so the one thing that I added is that it also shows me the statistics when it is charging. So it shows me the amps, how much it has put into how much energy the car has drawn from the grid since it started charging, and it's the timer. So it's charging for 39 minutes now. And as I said, most of the coding is here. First of all, I had to fix a mistake because previously here I said return, and I just said return charge state, which is not correct. And this is something that I've indicated in a previous video as well. And that's a mistake that I made quite a few times as well. But the Node-RED standard is that a return message must have at least a payload. And if it doesn't have a payload, then it just gets ignored. So if you run into the same issue that you do a return, but nothing happens on the output because you're trying to push an object to return or to the output of the node, which doesn't have a payload. So if you want to send your custom object, then actually you should have put it into an object itself, which has a payload, and the payload is the object that you want to push through. So now I added topic as well, and I added the array brackets, which I realize it's not necessarily because I'm only sending one data through. But if you send an array with multiple data, then you have to put it into an array bracket. So now it's not necessary in my case because I only have one output and I'm only sending one message out. The main thing hasn't really changed. So it still has this cycle, this condition which detects when the charging starts, and it has a condition when the charging ends.
4:45 p.m. Time to start wrapping up your workday and plan for dinner.
Thank you, Google. And what it also does, it calculates how much energy used. And the other thing I've added is it calculates how many seconds, which is actually milliseconds, have passed since the start time and the end time. And it also calculates, converts it into like an hour minute seconds format, which is done by this these two functions that I pulled from stock overflow. And then it's also going to store it in the context. So we can see that it stores all this information here. And also I added this toFixed here. So whenever I display the value, as you can see, it has a lot of decimal places. And I only need the last two. And I realized that the toFixed is actually returning the value as a string. So I didn't want to do that, so I'm doing this toFixed only at the end when I'm displaying the value, but I'm still storing the full value with all the decimal places, which probably is not really required, but anyway, that's how the data is stored. And yeah, so I have the place when it stops, and I've added this third condition, which is monitoring when the charging is in progress, which again, it just completed. So it completed charging. We haven't really used the car much, so I think it's fully charged now. So you can see that it again at the end it calculates the charge time. When it's charging, it calculates the charge time from the beginning and also the energy used, and it did put it on the note. On the status node, so you could see that being updated all the time. So these are the changes that I've done here. And also you can see, well, this is still up, is I started using a topic which describes whether the charging starts, so the topic is start, or the charging stopped, so the topic is stopped, or it is charging. And then based on this topic, I have a switch node here, and then based on this, I decide what to do. So here I check what the topic is, start, stop charging. And then, of course, if it's, the topic is, why is it so? Okay, so if it's started, then it sends out the message that the charging started. And when it ends, then it sends out the message that the charging completed, and includes the charge time text. So that's the human readable format, and the energy used. So we can see it here. So charging completed exactly 43 minutes, and the energy used is 2.49 kilowatt hours. Good. And I've also added these two messages here, and that gives me a notification whenever the power comes on and goes. And the only reason I've added this because this is a type of off-peak tariff, which is not the way it is off-peak is that it's on a special switch and a meter. So when the switch is on, that's when I have off-peak power. So I just wanted to know when this comes on and off. But I guess it's something specific to my installation. This is not something that you would need or you would monitor. And the other two things which I added here, which is only debug nodes, but this is something I want to do for the future. So whenever the charging updates, then it puts it was updating the message here, but and that is the message which comes out of the third output here when the topic is charging. And I want to use this to update other things, so like a dashboard, or I think I'm going to put it on a touch panel. So there is going to be like a special EV screen where I can monitor this. So this will change to some other data transformation and probably some Modbus sending. And I also want to run some daily stats. So if, let's say, if I'm charging the car multiple times a day, then I just want to add them up and then maybe do a cutoff point at 7 a.m. in the morning, so I can see how much energy I charged, which would be sort of related to how much I used the car in a previous day. So those would be the future uses. And by the way, since we are talking about all these changes, I wanted to mention something which I only realized today, and basically there is a discussion on this on the Node-RED forum, is related to here, because I create this flow variable, and which stores when the charging started and all the, the time information and everything. And in the function node, I read this into, I get this data into like a variable that I create here. And of course you can see that I'm changing and updating the value, and whenever I update something I use this flow.set, so I write the information back to the context. But I do it when the charging starts, and I also do it when the charging completes. You can see it here. But when it's just charging, so it's the middle of the cycle, I did not do that because I didn't want, I don't think it was useful information, so I thought I just calculate it on the fly. I put it onto the status and send it out the output, but I'm not going to store it in the flow. But actually it gets stored in the flow. So I was basically told here that when you are using the flow.get, then Node-RED gets so the flow.get returns the object itself. So if you're making changes to that object, that would automatically reflect in the context. So even without using, so if you create, let's say, I don't know whether it's a correct word, whether you create an instance, well, this wouldn't be an instance of the flow data, but it actually sort of like points to that. And when you are making changes, then it automatically updates the context. So normally you wouldn't even need to use the flow.set if you have already read the flow and making changes to that. But it works fine if you are using memory storage. But if you are using file storage, you actually need to use the flow.set in order to flush this data out to the file storage. Again, this is what it was mentioned here. So actually it is a good practice after all. So I thought, oh, okay, then I don't need to use the flow.set. But I think it's a good practice, as it was again mentioned in the forum, that to use the flow.set, because for any reason you decide to change the storage that, from like it's been stored in memory, but now I want it to be stored on a file storage. Then if you don't have a flow.set, then it's not going to get saved. Well, it gets updated in memory, but that memory changes will not get saved to the file. So still, it's a good practice to just use flow.set all the time when you want to save the changes, because then you can just easily come back and you can append with a third parameter, which is going to be the storage option. So for example, I have file system, that's my storage option if I can remember it correctly. So this is going to instruct Node-RED to write it to the file. But at least if you have the flow.set, you remember that, oh, I need to make a change here because now I want to save it to somewhere else. But if you start omitting the flow.set, you just won't remember that, oh, okay, I changed here something, I should have saved it and should have saved it in the data into the file system. So I think that will be the follow-up. And as I said, I already have a couple of ideas how I want to improve it with a few more things here. So I will be working on those in a couple of days, and all this will be follow-up in a new video, maybe in a week, or if I'm lucky, maybe it's going to be shorter. So that will be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.